Have you been thinking about acquiring another energy company, but you're not sure where to start? Or perhaps you're on the other side. You're actually thinking about selling your company, but you're not sure if it's the right time to do so. Hi, I'm Fareed with Cargus, and welcome to another episode of Energy Matters. Today's episode is all about mergers and acquisitions, and I have with me a very special guest, Barrett Conway, Managing Director of Cetane Associates, a company specializing in helping fuel dealers in all things related to mergers and acquisitions. Now, we have a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into the interview. But before we do, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you can be notified of any future episode. Let's get into it. Hi, Barrett. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us with Cargus, and we're so happy to be able to chat with you here. All
Yeah,
right.
well, thanks so much for having us on, Fareed. Really looking forward to our conversation and getting to know a little more about you and hopefully teaching you guys a little bit about the M&A process.
So, can you explain to sort of all the different things that Cetane does for your clients?
So yeah, Cetane Associates is a M&A advisor that's really focused on the propane and heating oil industry. We can do valuation work. So if you're looking for estate planning or just kind of needing to know what my company's worth, we will do buy side advisory. So for the buyers that are looking for some help, we will help out either taking it all the way from offer to closing or just kind of, hey, this is what we think it's worth. This is what we think you guys should offer. Here are the things to look out for. We've helped out with presentation of a letter of intent and a due diligence checklist. We can help out in those areas as well. But I'd say Cetane's main bread and butter, really what we do is helping the owners of small businesses sell. So sort of sell side advisory. At this point, we have a full team. We have 16 team members in 9 states. So we're kind of all across the country at this point. And we have team members on the front end working on the finance and sim creation, the financial model. We have point people that really work with the sellers throughout the whole transaction and walk them through each stage and are with them the whole way there. And then we have some back end non-practicing attorney legal experts, and they really help out with this is how these transactions should work. You have many M&A attorneys out there that have done every industry under the sun, but our industry is a little different. So they're really good about helping with that, getting together the closing schedules for the document and really helping get the deal across the finish line.
Is it true that we are seeing consolidation and a lot of selling and buying happening, especially in the last few years?
Yeah, so I would say overall, I think activity is up. We've seen a lot of transactions from our side at Cetane Associates, and then we see a lot of transactions just in the industry in general, stuff that Cetane's not involved with as well. I think there has been an uptick over the last 4 or 5 years. I think there's a lot of different reasons for that happening. A lot of the owners are really getting to a retirement age, and at this time, there's just not really that next generation to come in. A lot of these businesses, as you know, are family owned and operated. A lot are multi-generational, third, fourth, fifth generation, even sometimes. But what we run into a lot is people do want to retire and enjoy kind of the last phase of their life, get to enjoy all their hard work that they've put in over 30, 40 years. And there's really just not been that next generation. Maybe they had a son or daughter, but they went to medical school or law school and are not involved in the business. And we've really seen that as a big answer for why people are kind of exiting. There's been a lot of political pressure in some states. Really, that's a state by state issue at this point. But you'll see some states are a little tougher. And I think that makes sort of the small business owner sit back and say, this is going to be a big, long road ahead. This is a tough fight. Is it worth it for me to stick it out, or should I just kind of take my chips off the table at this time? And I think that's really some of the reasons we've seen an uptick in consolidation.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of these sellers tend to be family-owned businesses. A lot of these companies, are they all kind of started around the same time frame, do you think? And are they all of a certain age before that, why aren't they being passed down to the next generation, do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting question and something that I've actually observed over my time. I've worked on quite a few transactions at this point, and when soldiers got back from World War II, they actually gave out GI Bills, and you were able to take money to start businesses. And
Yeah.
funny enough, especially really in the Northeast, where we saw heavier populations back in the late 40s, you'll see a lot of these businesses that are on their fourth generation or so started in 1947, 1948, 1949, and use those GI Bills as kind of, this is how I bought my first truck, and we operated out of my kitchen table, and maybe I drove the truck and my wife answered the calls, and that's kind of how these things started. I'd say propane, there's a lot more younger companies.
Hmm.
I've seen some more entrepreneurial people that get in and started a business, and we've seen many first generation people sell too. Every owner has a different reason why they're selling or why they're passing it on, and it's really hard to nail it down. But it is funny. I have seen quite a few businesses. We've even worked with some that started in the 1800s. I'm thinking of one that was originally a schooner for sugarcane down in the Caribbean, and they brought stuff back up to the Boston area. And I
That's
think that
wild.
company started in 1886 or something like that.
Wow.
So you kind of see the gambit of everything. We've even worked with some that started in 2012 and kind of worked for 10 years. This is their entrepreneurial side after working a job. And then this was their kind of exit retirement plan as well.
So if we switch the lens to the buyers,
Yep.
are you noticing that certain types of companies are the same ones that are coming up over and over again, or there's different varieties of the type of companies that are buying what's being sold here?
Really, there's a handful of things that we start with, and it's what is the product mix is the first one probably. Are you a mixed fuel user? Are you propane only? Are you full service with HVAC? Then it's geography. Where are you at in the country? There's certain buyers that look in certain regions and maybe don't go to certain regions for various reasons. I will say we see a lot of repeat buyers. There's quite a few that work with us quite often or and have a very big mandate to continue to do acquisitions. That's part of their growth strategy. They want organic growth, but they also would like to do acquisitions to grow quicker. And so we've actually seen an uptick of quite a few new buyers as well. And we've seen a lot of interest from the private equity space, which is sort of outside capital that comes in with someone that's either worked in the industry or they've come up with a thesis that they do like the industry a lot. And just this year alone in 2023, we've seen, I'd say, 8 new private equity groups that are reaching out to us, really, really interested in getting into the industry and starting to do acquisitions. So that's been encouraging. I think there's still quite a bit of interest in the space overall. And although we do see a lot of the same bigger strategic buyers, there's also still some, I'll call it family owned mom and pop, that still makes sense on some of the smaller transactions as well.
It
Yeah.
seems like a lot of the companies that are doing the best these days have acquisition as one of the main pillars for their growth strategy, right? So for the casual viewers among us, why can you just explain why that is?
Yeah, so acquisitions give you a lot of leg up in a few areas, I'd say. One, you obviously get increase in customers and gallons right away, right? If you buy 5 million gallons, you're going to be doing 5 million more than you did the week before you closed. There's a lot of opportunity to learn. So I think the good, humble buyer realizes that we might be doing some things good. There's probably a handful of things we could be doing better. And I think through acquisitions, they'll sometimes learn better practices. And maybe they do marketing better, or maybe they do routing better. But there's various things. Maybe they do tank rental fees, and we haven't been doing those. So there's various ways that you can learn some new things to hopefully increase your overall business as well. It gives you diversification. So there's buying, if you're a heating oil company, there's been purchases of propane. If you're more on the delivered fuels and you're trying to get more into HVAC, there's been purchases of more heavy HVAC companies. and I think it helps your product diversification. Then there's just geography. Maybe you're getting into a new area that helps either grow and expand, or maybe you do an acquisition that's already in your marketing area and you get all the synergies. So you have a lot of cost savings if maybe you move everyone into one office, and the routing can get better because you have more
Uh-huh.
people able to go on shorter trips. So I think that's really the big thesis on why acquisitions work. And I think there's a lot of growing pains when you do it. You could have on many buyers, and I think they'd say, the first time we did it, we did XYZ wrong, and the 10th time we did it, we got XYZ right, but there was still a few more growing pains, and it's always an ebb and flow. I think you need to stay humble and nimble and be able to move with the environment.
I see. Can you sort of describe when an acquisition, like, because we don't generally see at all of how this all kind of plays out behind the scene. The end consumers just see, oh, that company is being acquired, right? When a company is up for sale like that, do you generally see multiple buyers? Like, what's going on there? Is it being put for bid? Like, how do you find the buyers? How do you match the buyers and the sellers?
Yeah.
And what is it looking like usually?
Yeah, so that's really what Cetane Associates does. This is kind of the nuts and bolts of what we do. So the first thing I'd say is a much more detailed, complicated process than it might seem from the outside looking in. Normal timeline takes about 6 months from sign up to completion. And there's really a lot that goes into it. So we start by gathering all the information. We put together a confidential information memorandum, which is sort of the marketing book on the company. And at that point, we go out to market. We have a very vague teaser, is what we call it, that doesn't show it shows kind of rough details, rough geography, but we don't want to be specific about the company. We don't want just everyone on the street to know Barrett propane is for sale, because
Got
we want to be confidential, and confidentiality is key through this process. So we're very vague. There's some high level statistics like margin, propane tank control, what the EBITDA is, which is earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
it.
A lot of these businesses trade on a multiple of EBITDA. So the financial model that Cetane's putting together kind of gets each year to a EBITDA and an adjusted EBITDA at that. So from there, we will go out and we do kind of a silent auction. We go out to multiple buyers, multiple bids in, and if there's eight offers on the business, maybe 3 or 4 of them are kind of top premier offers. We'll do in-person meetings with the buyers and sellers, and that's a really fun time. We jokingly on our team call it speed dating, but it's really get to know you. We have the numbers. They've seen the book on the business. It's really who's going to do best with my customers, who's going to do best for my employees, and who's going to do best with the legacy of the business. So from that point, we're getting final offers in and selecting a party, and then hopefully moving towards due diligence, legal work, and a closing. And I went fast on the last part. The last part's usually the trickiest part, is getting all the due diligence together and working with lawyers and doing environmental work. A lot of these companies that we work with have real estate and storage, so there's always environmental work that is involved, and it's a detailed, complicated process, but that's really how we get it done for our clients.
You're summarizing that really well there, but it sounds like there's a lot more going on under the hood, under each part that you're mentioning. Now, I'm assuming ideally on the customer and end user side, they don't really see much of a change, do they? Like if I'm a customer of a company that's being sold.
Yeah, I think that's another point to how do we learn lessons as a buyer. I think 10 years ago, we would see big buyer come in, slap their name on the truck and change the tickets. And then they realized that that wasn't working so well. And so almost from the buyer's perspective, again, you want things to operate as they were, you don't want to see much change. It should be the same driver pulling up and delivering fuel to your house as a customer. It should be the same CSR answering the phone. And so I think the good acquisitions and the long-term strategies that seem to work better is not too much change, and the customer shouldn't feel much, if any, change at all.
As somebody that's been doing this a long time and working with many companies, what do you think are some of the gotchas or things that are always a main challenge that keep coming up from time to time when dealing with buying and selling in the...
Yeah, so I think we have an article, Jeff Bruner on our team wrote it, I believe. It's Get Your House in Order. Like I said, it's a very detailed process. And do you have your financials in order? Are tax returns matching up? Are the gallons and sales matching up to what's in the financial books? Um, it's really just making sure you've kind of prepared for this. You didn't just decide, oh, I'm going to sell my business tomorrow and then go after it. I will say it takes, in the good processes where there's not as many gotchas, it was well thought out. This was thought of for maybe 2 years in advance of this is what I should be working on. These are kind of the documents that I'll have to have prepared throughout the process. And some other gotchas, it tends to be like silly stuff that we think's easy, right? But like having signed tank lease agreements on your propane tanks on file. Sometimes you'd be surprised, but you own the steel out in the field, but there's no proof of ownership.
All right. So if I'm a company and I am sort of entertaining the idea about, I think I want to sell, like what are some of the markers that I should be paying attention to let that would let me know that this is when I should be selling,
Yeah.
or even if I'm not even thinking about selling, but I really am. You've seen this from time to time. They really should be thinking about selling. What are those indicators that companies should be watching for?
Yeah, so that's difficult to say as far as timing. When do I go?
Yeah.
We can never time the market, right? Unless you're the luckiest guy alive, you're never going to get the highest high in the stock market. So it's hard to get it down from a timing perspective. I mean, this is a big emotional life decision. So I think you need to step back and talk with your family or whoever the other owners are, and everyone needs to be on the same page as timing. This is the right time. Um, as far as industry and what's going on, I think it's difficult to nail it down. I think it really is a case by case basis of this is what works for me and this is why we got to this place. I think there are things in the business that you can start thinking of that maybe you crossed the hurdle. If there's a dollar amount in your mind that I think my company's worth $10 million, obviously we need all the financial information and value of the assets to back that up. So we can't just pick a number and hope for it. We need to build to that number. So if you have a number in your head, you can work with a group like ours. We'll kind of tell you what we think the value is and then what you should be working on if there's some things that'll increase your value. I think some of those contributions or increases to the multiple of EBITDA are gross margin, having a good margin overall on your products, propane tank control, having a high percentage of company owned steel out in the field for propane companies, having good new vehicles and good new facilities, kind of everything's clean and good and in good working order. We don't want a 20-year-old truck that's stumbling down the road, right? Customer demographics, you can't change this too much, but if you're in a good region, that usually helps. Some other things, automatic delivery is another one that we look at quite a bit. How many of your customers on a percentage basis are on automatic?
Which is challenging because as I talk to different partners, they're all saying it is shifting to mostly will call new customers, mostly will
Yep.
call. So that's a challenge. Okay.
And that I think the industries, the buyers are not seeing that as much of a sticking point as they did 10 years ago.
Before. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think the consumer's changing too, right? We now have apps on our phone and I can schedule a delivery right on my phone. I think the younger generation sort of likes that, and that would be more considered will call. So I think that fair point, I think that is sort of slipping away as a big sticker, but still something you want to work on. Buyers like to see it. If I have 85% automatic, those feel like really sticky customers compared
Yeah, absolutely.
to 20.
Now, shifting to the other side, the buyer side, you were saying that not all the buyers are the big guys. You're saying there's some private equity that comes in. So for those watching here, if they own a, I would say, like a normal size companies, they're not the mega players in the
Yep.
industry, and they have not acquired anyone before, but they're sort of thinking maybe I should. What are they should be? What should they be watching? Like, what are some, like, what are there indicators of when they should be talking to you guys and sort of consider, hey, we should be buying here because this would be a good growth strategy for our company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first you got to look at your balance sheet. Make sure you don't have heavy debt obligations already in place, because I think these work really well when you're able to get bank financing as a part of the deal. You put down some cash and then you get bank financing for another chunk of it. So I guess that leads right into the next step is I'd say you got to meet with your bank and make sure they think this is appropriate, because we might think it's a great idea, you think it's a great idea, but we have to get the money to make it happen. So usually it's the bank. They'll give you sort of pre-approved sounding. They won't know the deal per se, but they might say, hey,
Right.
if you're looking at something, you can probably buy a $3 million company. Very high level stuff, but they'll at least give you some kind of color to say this is what we think could work for you. And then if that's sort of the direction you're thinking of going, then I think it's great to start getting involved with people in the industry and talking to different owners, talking to different vendors, talking to groups like Cetane, and see how can I move this forward? Who should I be looking at? What should I be looking to acquire? Am I a propane company that needs more HVAC service? Am I a heating oil company that's looking to add propane? All those different kind of questions that you should have. And then start kind of doing your own research, either going to a group like Cetane Associates. We have the current listings on our website, and we're always happy to have a conversation with anyone. There's other things out there like Biz Buy Sell, where you'll see businesses for sale on there. And then usually one of the best acquisitions you could make is a local competitor or local friendly competitor. So you're going to kind of know the people that you'd want to go after. And I'd say develop relationships with those owners.
Do you think it's a good thing that there's all this turnover in the industry? And sort of where do you see the industry headed in terms of, is it going to continue to consolidate, you think, and we're going to end up with just a few players in the end? And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Or just kind of leave us with some kind of closing words of wisdom here. And what do you think the industry is headed towards, and sort of what from what you're seeing from this side of it, now that you've kind of oversee a lot of these transactions throughout the years?
I do not think it's healthy to have two, three big companies long term, that everything rolls up into just one or two companies. That said, it's still relatively cost ineffective to buy a heating oil truck and start delivering fuel. So I think as we see more consolidation roll ups happen, we'll still see more entrepreneurial type people start new businesses. And we've definitely seen that on the propane side, a little less so on the heating oil, I'd say, but it's still very, very much possible. If it's all going to come down to price, right? And everything's about competitive pricing. If there's only two companies and there's not much competition, they're going to be able to charge an obscenely high margin. If you, Fareed, see that, maybe you think, wow, I could just go get in a truck and start my own business. And next thing you know, 10 years down the line, you're number 3 in the market area because you decided to go a little less than that crazy strong margin. So I think we're going to see that. I think consolidation will continue to happen. And overall, in 10 years, there may be a less total number of companies, but I still think we're going to see more and more pop up as there's just going to be opportunities in various markets to start companies.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks so much again, Barrett, for spending your time here with us and answering all these questions I'm curious about, and even just how a lot of these process that seemingly just kind of happened. Like when the first time you hear about it, it's already happening, but there's like a lot of legwork that kind of leads up to it. And thanks for lending your expertise, and just I like where you kind of end there. It's just kind of encouraging. You don't have to be a big guys to be acquiring on the acquiring side, right? There's a big need for diversity, and I think the challenge is there for a company that's doing well financially to grow in this way. So I like that. I really like that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for the great questions. Thanks for having us on. and looking forward to working with you in the future.
All right, likewise. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Energy Matters. We hope it was helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.